Hello and welcome to Unacademy IAS English, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. A very good morning and welcome to the daily Hindu news analysis. So let's begin today's discussion by first looking at the topics that we are going to discuss. From the Delhi edition, I have chosen 8 important articles for a comprehensive analysis of today's newspaper. We have 3 articles from Economy and International Relations, which is very important for both prelims and mains, and we shall carry out a detailed analysis of these 3 articles. We also have 5 small articles that are relevant for prelims. So let's cover all these topics as comprehensively as possible so that you don't have to go back and read the newspaper again. If you guys are benefiting from our initiative, do support us with your likes, your comments, and without fail subscribe to our channel. Now, before we start, we have a very important announcement. As I mentioned yesterday, we are launching the SIP program, Success in Prelims program. This program will be held on the Unacademy platform every Saturday at 8 p.m. and you get to attempt 30 prelims MCQs from current affairs in a 1-hour duration. So, starting from tomorrow, SIP initiative will go live on the Unacademy platform, and it's a great opportunity for you to revise your current affairs of the week through prelims based MCQs. So register for this by using the link provided in the video description below. So let's start with the discussion by first looking at the column on page number 12. This article deals with the topic of vertical fiscal imbalance. It focuses on fiscal federalism in India, the financial relations between center and state, the role of finance commission, and helps us understand the concept of vertical fiscal imbalance. So let's dive deep into this topic and understand every single detail so that any question in prelims or mains, you should be able to answer them. First, let's understand what exactly is the role of the finance commission. In a federal setup, when it comes to the fiscal relations between center and states, and devolution of funds from center to states, what role does the Finance Commission play? The Finance Commission is a constitutional body provided under Article 280 of the Indian Constitution. It is established by the President of India. The President of India provides for its establishment. It has a term of 5 years and it consists of a chairman with 4 members appointed by the President. So that would be the composition, the term of the Finance Commission. So what does the Finance Commission do? For example, recently the 16th Finance Commission was notified by the President of India with Dr. Arvind Panagaria as the chairman, and 4 members also were appointed by the President. So what does this constitutional body do? According to Article 280, the Finance Commission has a certain mandate. It basically decides vertical devolution of funds and horizontal devolution of funds. So what do you mean by vertical and horizontal devolution? See, when it comes to the tax revenue, which is collected by the states, by the center, eventually the taxes collected and the taxes held by the center has to be distributed, devolved to the states as well. So the percentage of tax revenue which is devolved from the center to all the states collectively, that is your vertical devolution. The percentage of funds to be devolved from center to all the states collectively. For example, for the 14th and 15th Finance Commission, this percentage has been around 41 to 42%. Essentially, around 41 to 42% of the taxes with the center is devolved to the states, and this devolution is vertical devolution. Now, how will this be devolved amongst the states? How will it be distributed amongst different states? That is horizontal devolution. What will be the share of different states, which depends on several parameters, including the population and the expenditure incurred by the state, etc. The horizontal devolution is also decided by the Finance Commission. So vertical devolution is about the transfer of funds from the center to the states, and what would be the state-wise allocation? That would be horizontal devolution. So this would be the primary role of the Finance Commission, to determine how centre's tax revenue will be devolved to the states and what will be the share of each state within the divisible pool of central taxes. Apart from that, the Finance Commission also recommends grants in aid to states, which is part of Article 275, and it also suggests measures to augment the consolidated fund of the state to enhance the resources available to panchayats and municipal bodies at the local level. Apart from that, the President can provide any other terms of reference as well. For example, the 16th Finance Commission has been asked to look into disaster management financing and how disaster management response and mitigation funds can be distributed between the states. So, such additional terms of reference could also be added by the President. So, the Finance Commission plays this important role in determining the devolution of funds from center to states and the share of each state, which essentially accounts for your vertical and horizontal devolution. Now, according to this article written by a former IRS officer, in India's fiscal setup, in our fiscal federalism, there is a major vertical fiscal imbalance. So, what do you mean by this? Let's understand the concept of vertical fiscal imbalance. It essentially means that the states are not getting sufficient vertical devolution from the center. If you look at data from 15th Finance Commission, it clearly shows that state governments are the ones which are incurring most of the expenditure. If you look at welfare schemes, if you look at various delivery of public services, it usually is done through the states. The states play a pivotal role in the final delivery of services and implementation of various socio-economic welfare programs. So, states incur a significant expenditure, but their ability to raise revenue on their own is very limited. So, where is this mismatch being met from? This mismatch is met from the vertical devolution that comes from the center. So, it means that the states are dependent heavily on the center in order to finance their expenditure. In our fiscal federal setup, states have very limited scope to raise their revenue, and it is not sufficient to meet the high expenditure that the states are incurring. Data from 15th Finance Commission clearly shows that states are incurring 61% of the revenue expenditure in the country. But if you look at the revenue receipts, states account only for 38%. So, this mismatch between revenue receipts and expenditure is met through devolution of funds coming from the center. So, it means that states are heavily dependent on the central government, which gives the center greater control over the states, which might erode the principle of cooperative federalism. Center might misuse this leverage as states are heavily dependent on center's devolution, and this in a way compromises the very spirit of federalism. So, this imbalance which is found, where states are incurring most of the expenditure with very limited ability to raise revenue, and they are heavily dependent on vertical devolution from the center, this is vertical fiscal imbalance. In a healthy fiscal setup, there should be a better balance and a greater devolution of funds should be happening from the center to states, so states are less dependent on the center for finances. But in the case of India, if you look at the financial relationship between center and states, states have become heavily dependent on the center, and this could be unhealthy for a democracy and for a federal setup. So, that is the concern being flagged by the writer. Now, if you look at our constitution, if you look at the center-state financial relations, there is a clear demarcation of responsibilities. The center is responsible for levying and collecting certain taxes, such as your income tax, corporation tax, and even some indirect taxes. So, in this regard, the union government is the right authority to levy and collect these taxes. States also have their own tax jurisdiction, and this is designed to enhance tax efficiency, to ensure that states have their own sources of revenue, where states levy and collect some taxes, keep some taxes to themselves, and states contribute to the central divisible pool of taxes as well. So, the fiscal responsibilities, the taxation responsibilities has been clearly divided by the constitution. The idea here is to bring in efficiency in taxation and provide fiscal independence to the states. But however, given that tax devolution has been playing an increasing role in financing the expenditure of the states, the center gets to play a bigger role, a major role when it comes to the financial health of state governments. So it is this dependency which could create a problem, and if the percentage of vertical devolution is not enough, then center gets a higher degree of leverage and control over state finances. So the writer is presenting data based on a study. The writer is pointing out that if you look at vertical devolution, there is a clear mismatch. The vertical fiscal imbalance becomes very evident. By relying on Finance Commission data, the writer is bringing out vertical fiscal imbalance as a percentage of the devolution ratio, and he is comparing that with the actual devolution that happened and what should have been the devolution in order to ensure that imbalance would be zero. As I told you, if you look at the vertical devolution over the last decade under 14th and 15th Finance Commission, the center to state devolution, which is your vertical devolution, is around 41 to 42%. But the study conducted by the writer shows that in order to ensure there is no vertical fiscal imbalance between center and states, the devolution should have been in the range of 47 to 51%, which is significantly higher than what has actually been recommended by the 14th and 15th Finance Commission. You can clearly see in the table, for each fiscal, vertical fiscal imbalance has been computed by using Finance Commission's data, and the writer is suggesting what should have been the vertical devolution to ensure that the imbalance would be zero. So over the last few years, the devolution should have been 47, 48, 51 to even 56 to 48, 51%, ideally in the range of 47 to 51%. But over the last decade under 14th, 15th Finance Commission, the devolution vertically from center to states has just been 41 to 42%. So this is a significant difference which creates that vertical fiscal imbalance, leading the states to become more dependent on center for financing their expenditure. So that is why the writer supports the demand of few state governments. Few states have demanded the 16th Finance Commission and the center to raise vertical devolution to 50%. So that 50% of the funds which is available in the divisible pool of taxes with the center should be devolved to the states. If 50% devolution is done as demanded by the states, then vertical fiscal imbalance can be addressed. The writer carries out further computations and recommends at least a 49% vertical devolution to address this imbalance, to protect the federal nature of Indian polity and to ensure that the spirit of cooperative federalism is promoted by the center. So compared to the 41 to 42% devolution which has happened till now, the writer is recommending at least 49% devolution. States are demanding 50% vertical devolution. So this is what we take away from this important article. Now take up a practice question based on this. The role of 16th Finance Commission should be to eliminate vertical fiscal imbalance in federal relations. Discuss. So you can start out your answer by talking about the role of the Finance Commission and how it is critical for fiscal federalism. That could be a good introduction. Then in the body, discuss vertical devolution and the problem with vertical devolution, the imbalance that gets created, how states are heavily dependent on the center and why the gap has to be plugged. Then provide the recommendations, maybe provide a comparison of the data as well, what has been the devolution, what should have been the devolution to address the imbalance and what states are demanding. And conclude by stating that to promote and protect the spirit of fiscal federalism, 16th Finance Commission should focus on eliminating vertical fiscal imbalance by increasing the percentage of vertical devolution. So that completes your answer. Now let's look at another article on page 10 related to PDS and food security. Public distribution system has been one of the most critical socio-economic welfare programs in our country, which has played a pivotal role in guaranteeing food security. through the PDS, center and states together distribute food grains such as rice and wheat and as well as essential food items at highly subsidized prices to ensure that food security is accessible and affordable to the common people, especially to those below poverty line. So, this article is focused on the improvements that has happened in PDS, how the leakages that were occurring in PDS has been plugged after the National Food Security Act was enacted by the Parliament. I hope you know that the National Food Security Act, which was passed in 2013, it has recognized right to food as a legal right. It guarantees food security by recognizing right to food as a legal right. So, prior to the enactment of this law by the then UPA government under Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, if you look at PDS, there were a lot of flaws in its implementation when it came to offtake of food grains from the Food Corporation of India. The states in particular which would implement the PDS, they would lift the food grains from the stock released by the FCI, the Food Corporation of India, and then they would distribute this through the PDS system via the ration shops. So, under the previous system, before the Food Security Act was brought in, there were a lot of leakages that were happening in the system. Now, what do you mean by leakages? Essentially, out of the total food grains that was lifted from the Food Corporation of India, finally, before it could reach the end user, the targeted beneficiary, there would be a significant loss of food grains, either due to transportation loss, wastage, which is a result of poor storage and poor warehousing facilities, or also due to corruption, where corrupt government officials and the corrupt system could divert some of the food grains, thus creating significant leakages in the system, and as a result the beneficiaries were suffering. They weren't even receiving half the food grains that were being lifted from the Food Corporation of India. More than half of the food grains were getting lost in the process of distribution and delivery. So, this was a significant leakage which had made PDS a very ineffective scheme, which was simply a burden on the state exchequer. According to data, before the National Food Security Act, at an all India level, the total leakage was 41.7%. Now, imagine if 100 kg of rice and wheat was lifted by states from the Food Corporation of India, only around 59 kgs would reach the beneficiaries. Almost 41.7 kgs would be lost in between due to transportation losses, wastage, and also due to corruption. So, this was a significant gap in implementation of PDS. But after the National Food Security Act, the writer notices a significant improvement in the delivery of food grains, in the implementation of PDS, and it has brought out significant reforms. In fact, when the National Food Security Act was still being debated, there were few state governments which had already experimented with PDS reforms. Between 2005 and 2012, states like Bihar, Chhattisgarh and Odisha, these three states in particular, they pioneered reforms in PDS and brought down the losses and leakages by a very significant margin. By bringing in better technology, by bringing in more accountability and better transportation and warehousing, Bihar, Chhattisgarh and Odisha ensured that the losses happening during transportation and delivery was significantly brought down, thus reducing the overall leakages in the PDS system. So, this set a benchmark for the National Food Security Act. It became a valid justification for bringing out a law that would recognize right to food as a legal right and push for PDS reforms across all states. So, if you look at data from the latest Household Consumption Expenditure Survey, which was brought out by the National Sample Survey Office, you will notice a significant improvement as far as PDS is concerned, the leakages are concerned. According to the data from Household Consumption Expenditure Survey, the overall leakages at the national level has dropped to 22%. From a high of 41.7%, the overall leakages in PDS has come down to around 22%, which is a significant improvement. Of course, a lot more can be done, but at least this reduction in leakage is a significant development, and the credit goes to the National Food Security Act, which led to reforms in the PDS system. But some states have outperformed the national average. Several states have brought down the leakage to single digits, thus marking a significant improvement in the delivery of essential services like food delivery and food security. So the writer is very clear that the National Food Security Act did have a big impact in improving the efficiency of PDS. For example, the recognition of right to food as a legal right led to the expansion of coverage to remove any exclusion error, because previously only those with ration cards would be provided the benefits of PDS. It was a very rigid system that existed, and a number of beneficiaries, almost 50% of the beneficiaries before, they did not have ration cards. As a result, they were getting excluded from the PDS, and they were not being provided with the support. They were not being essentially eligible for receiving the food grains under PDS. So this was addressed through the National Food Security Act, which widened the coverage, expanded the coverage, and it has led to significant improvement in the delivery of food grains to the beneficiaries. The rigidness that existed in the system was removed by expanding the coverage to remove any exclusion error where beneficiaries were getting excluded because of technicalities and the need of documents. So expansion of overall coverage has indeed helped, and today the coverage stands at around 66% at a national level. 66% of the intended beneficiaries are covered. But this is still short of the target set under the law. The National Food Security Act sets a target of 50% coverage in rural areas, 75% coverage in urban areas. So at a national level right now the coverage is around 66%, and especially there are still some gaps in the rural areas which has to be plugged. But still, compared to before, after the National Food Security Act, PDS coverage has definitely improved, which has played a role in bringing down the leakages as well. As more beneficiaries have become part of the PDS system, there has been greater accountability as well and improvement in delivery of services. And also integration of technology, especially Aadhaar based biometric verification, has indeed played a big role according to experts. But there are critics as well who point out that introduction of such technological interventions could leave out some of the beneficiaries, because Aadhaar based biometric verification may not be entirely foolproof. There have been cases where genuine beneficiaries have been denied access to essential services just because their identity could not be verified, especially in rural areas where fingerprints are unreliable, and when fingerprint is used as a biometric detail to verify identity, there have been cases of exclusion. So there are critics who point out that Aadhaar based biometric verification has hurt delivery of services, but there are experts who support the integration of Aadhaar into service delivery. They point out that PDS is a success case, because in PDS intended beneficiaries are being perfectly targeted, and this has played a big role in reducing leakages and in tackling corruption by bringing in biometric based verification. So all these measures are responsible for improving the efficiency of PDS, and the credit has been given to the National Food Security Act. So PDS remains a key socio-economic initiative that guarantees food security in the country and plays a big role in ensuring nutrition and tackling malnutrition in the country, especially during difficult circumstances like the COVID-19 pandemic, the lockdowns. The government even launched additional schemes like Pradhan Mantri Garib Antyodaya Anna Yojana. States have further expanded PDS on their own, and even outside of the coverage of NFSA, states have launched several initiatives to step up food security through PDS. So these improvements, these reforms which have happened has reduced the leakages significantly, and it has helped the intended beneficiaries. The writer does raise a concern about the introduction of technology into service delivery, because sometimes technology can lead to exclusion as well. Though technology can bring in accountability and check corruption, it can bring in cases of exclusion where the beneficiaries might get excluded just because verification was not possible or just because they didn't have the right documents. So one needs to be mindful of the ground level challenges created by introduction of technology into public service delivery. But if it is used correctly and efficiently, it can play a big role in improving service delivery and bring accountability, checks and balances, reduce corruption, reduce overall leakages in government schemes. So please take up this question. Implementation of PDS reforms as mandated in National Food Security Act has reduced leakages. Evaluate. So it's a straightforward question. So use the points that we have discussed and try to write an answer and post the answer in the comment section. Now let's look at another important column from page number 10 that talks about India's critical mineral mission. In this year's budget, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has announced a critical mineral mission to secure the supply of critical minerals in order to ensure mineral security to the Indian economy. As we have discussed in many previous sessions, critical and strategic minerals are going to play a critical role in the coming years. As we focus on energy transition to move towards cleaner fuels, to decarbonize the economy, to tackle global warming and climate change, and as we switch towards cleaner renewable forms of energy from solar, wind to electric, we will need battery technology, we will need essential raw materials like lithium, cobalt, nickel and rare earth minerals and elements. Unfortunately for India, we are not blessed with sufficient resources, and as of now we have almost 100% import dependency when it comes to critical minerals. Some of these minerals have a strategic value as well because they have a dual application both in civilian and military industries, from electronics to semiconductors to aerospace to defense and space technology. These critical strategic minerals find a wide variety of application. So a geopolitical game has broken out in the world when it comes to the control of the supply chains of critical minerals. Countries like China already have a dominating control over critical mineral supply chains, and they can leverage this economic potential and turn that into a strategic leverage against other countries. So for countries like India, which have a 100% import dependency on countries like China, this could become a huge geopolitical disadvantage as well, raising even security concerns. The Western countries led by United States and European powers have already started diversifying the critical mineral supply chains. They are trying to secure critical mines around the world. They are trying to make resilient supply chains to ensure that their dependency on China goes down. So at the global level, this geopolitical competition is already underway, and India also is one of the players as far as securing critical mineral supplies are concerned. So to ensure that we secure our mineral security, Critical Mineral Mission was announced in this year's budget with three main objectives. One objective is to expand domestic production. We do have some domestic reserves. Recently, for example, lithium reserves were discovered in Jammu and Kashmir in the Riyasi district. And few other critical minerals have been found as well in Karnataka, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, as well as Maharashtra and Andhra Pradesh, in Tamil Nadu as well. So the government is focusing on stepping up domestic exploration and greater involvement of private industry, allocation of mining licenses and scaling up the exploitation of these domestic resources, so that at least to the extent possible we can meet the demand domestically. Second priority is on recycling of critical minerals. By ensuring that we recycle the existing critical minerals within our economy, we can bring in the raw material, ensure that it doesn't go to waste. So focusing on recycling of existing products, commodities will bring back the critical minerals into the supply chain, and this could be a great way of creating a more sustainable economy for critical minerals. And finally, the third main objective is to secure overseas assets, because there are several countries which are blessed with critical and strategic mineral resources. So tying up with those countries, securing those mines, investing in those abroad or foreign projects and creating parallel supply chains for India is a top focus of Critical Mineral Mission. India has already taken a major step in this regard. Last year, we amended the Mines and Minerals Development and Regulation Act. 6 minerals were denotified from the atomic energy list so that private sector can also start exploring these minerals and focus on domestic production. We have also notified the list of critical minerals, and it has led the government to encourage private sector participation. We are throwing open this sector for greater private involvement, because public sector units alone will not be able to deliver with regard to the demands of the Indian economy for critical minerals. So private sector investments, private sector participation is going to be critical, and hence the government is simplifying the regulatory process as well. The process of awarding licenses and the environmental regulations, they are being simplified so that there will be greater private involvement, and this could help in meeting the domestic demand. It will ensure that we will fully utilize and exploit the domestic potential, and this can meet a significant part of the demand for critical minerals. Then for foreign exploration, for securing foreign mines, we have set up a new entity called KABIL. A new public sector unit has been set up by 3 major public sector organizations. So KABIL stands for Khanij Videsh India Limited, set up in 2019, and its primary mandate is to scout for critical minerals around the world and work with those countries, invest in those projects and secure these mines for India to create these global supply chains. In many ways, its role is similar to OVL. You might have heard of ONGC Videsh Limited. It's the foreign branch, the foreign subsidiary of ONGC. So OVL scouts for oil and gas resources around the world, makes investments in foreign gas fields and oil fields, and secures the oil and gas supplies to India. Like OVL has invested in Russia, for example, in the Sakhalin gas reserves. It has invested in many other countries in Africa, in Venezuela and others. So similar to the role of OVL, KABIL will also play a role in securing critical mines, in investing in those projects and setting up those supply chains so that our demand for critical minerals is met from reliable partners. Recently, KABIL has secured a lithium mining license in the Catamarca province of Argentina. South America is a focus area for KABIL, because in Latin America region, we have the lithium triangle comprising of Argentina, Bolivia and Chile, the ABC countries. These 3 Latin American countries are blessed with tremendous lithium reserves. It's called the lithium triangle. So India's focus is on these 3 countries, Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, to work with them to secure mines in the lithium triangle, as one of the world's largest reserves of lithium is found in these 3 countries. Parallelly, we are working with Australia as well. India, Australia have a critical mineral partnership. As part of our strategic relations, we have set up a critical mineral partnership, and Australia is also home to large reserves of critical minerals, from lithium to copper to cobalt and nickel. So Australia can be a reliable supplier, a reliable partner for India. KABIL is working with Australia to secure mines in Australia to ensure that the supply of critical minerals is secured for India. We are focusing on Africa as well, and this is the theme of this article, this column. The writer focuses mainly on Africa and the critical minerals present in Africa, and how India can tap those resources by leveraging the diplomatic relations that we have with African countries. Because apart from the lithium triangle and Australia, large reserves of critical minerals is found in African countries. As you all know, Africa is already a hotbed of natural resources. Africa is not only blessed with enormous land reserves, it's also blessed with plenty of precious minerals. Apart from hydrocarbons, gold, diamond, uranium, etc., it is also blessed with critical minerals, precious minerals and rare earth elements as well. So India is focusing on Africa, and this is where we are facing a geopolitical competition with China and other global powers. But India does have a unique advantage in Africa, because with the African continent we have an age-old connection, a historical civilizational connect, and we have a 3 million strong Indian diaspora today across African countries. If you look back in time, go back to ancient medieval times, Indian subcontinent had a strong maritime trade relationship with Africa, particularly East and South Africa, essentially Eastern and Southern Africa. So money lenders from Gujarat, traders from Malabar, they made a presence across Eastern and Southern Africa, and you still find that cultural connect. For example, you go to Kenya, you go to Tanzania, Zanzibar, which belongs to Tanzania, or you go to South Africa, for example, you find a strong Indian community present and very strong trade and financial and economic linkages with India even today. So this is an age-old historical civilizational connect and a cultural connect. So this gives India natural influence and tremendous soft power in these countries. So according to data from the International Energy Agency, almost 30% of the world's critical mineral reserves are present in African countries. So India can hope to tap at least a small percentage of these reserves in Africa, which is more than sufficient to meet our demands. That is why Africa should be a focus region for us when it comes to securing critical minerals. We should leverage the historical trade relations, the civilizational connect, the cultural ties that we have, and India accordingly has stepped up its African diplomacy. Traditionally, East and Southern Africa have been a priority in our foreign policy, but now we are focusing more on West Africa as well, also on the Sahara, Sub-Sahara region, and even on Central Africa. We are opening new diplomatic missions. The Ministry of External Affairs has recently taken the initiative to set up more high commissions, embassies and consulates across West Africa, North and Central Africa. We are scaling up our diplomatic presence, and along with that we are bringing more investments. Not just the government of India, but even India's private industry is playing a big role in Africa. So this could help us in securing essential supplies like lithium, cobalt, etc. from African countries, as Africa holds nearly 30% of the global critical mineral reserves. Now, if you look at our trade relationship, it's a very prominent trade relationship. India-Africa trade, bilateral trade, stands at almost $98 billion, and it's all set to cross the $100 billion mark. So very soon Africa will become one of the largest trading partners of India as a collective region, almost on par with European Union. So out of this bilateral trade relationship, which amounts to around $98 billion, a large part of it is comprised of mineral trade. Nearly $43 billion accounts for India's import of minerals, mineral fuels and oil and other assets from Africa. A large part of this trade relationship is already comprised of India's mineral imports, and also Africa is a major oil supplier as well, accounting for nearly 15% of our total demand. It is supplying 34 million tons of oil, thus playing a big role in India's energy security. So it's already playing a role in supplying fossil fuels to India, plus it is guaranteeing mineral supply, essential minerals, right, which is powering the Indian economy. So Indian companies have heavily invested in Africa to secure essential minerals. Almost $75 billion worth of Indian investments can be seen across Africa. We are also expanding the International Solar Alliance to step up the focus on clean energy, renewable energy. India is helping the African countries in the solar domain, and African countries are also focusing on improving their infrastructure, on creating resilient supply chains. So this is something India should work upon with the African partners. African countries are improving their mining policies, their regulatory policies, their port infrastructure. They are creating a pit to port model where directly from the mining pit, through effective rail and road transportation, the minerals can be transported to the strategic ports in Africa, from where it can be exported around the world through resilient supply chains which originate from Africa. So India should make every attempt to be part of these supply chains. We should not only invest in the mines, we should also invest in the infrastructure surrounding these mining projects, be it road, rail connectivity, right, which is essential for transporting the minerals, and seaport infrastructure. That's exactly what China has been doing. China has already been a major investor in road projects, railway projects and port projects. So India should take part in the pit to port model, not just focus on securing the mines and invest in those mining projects, but we should also play a role in the transport infrastructure of creating road and rail projects and port facilities from where we can secure these supplies and create a resilient supply chain. So African countries have launched a green mineral strategy focusing on green minerals, which are going to play a role in the transition that we are seeing in the world of energy. As the world moves away from fossil fuels and increasingly adopts clean, renewable forms of energy, African countries, which are going to play a key role in supplying these essential minerals, they have adopted a green mineral strategy to secure the supply chains. So India can work with them, be a part of the African green mineral strategy to secure the supply chains. So we are working with various countries like Tanzania, Zambia, Zimbabwe. We also have major projects going on in West Africa, North Africa as well. So these Indian investments and the general soft power, the goodwill that we enjoy is what can help India secure these resources. Because China has already outcompeted every other major power. China is already the largest investor in Africa. Most African countries have joined the Belt and Road Initiative, and China has already made billions of dollars worth of investments. In fact, later today in the prelim section, we will discuss about the China-Africa Summit, which we studied yesterday as well. Following the China-Africa Summit, China has made fresh announcements of investments and loans to Africa, which highlights the Chinese diplomatic presence and influence in Africa. So India has to compete with China over here. China is already securing critical mines from lithium to cobalt. For example, in DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, even though there is a major civil war going on, countries like China and even Russia are securing critical mineral mines from lithium to cobalt. So India also is focused on countries like DRC. For example, Kabul is trying to scout for critical mineral mines in Democratic Republic of Congo and other countries where critical strategic minerals are present. So this is where India should further step up the African diplomacy that we have. For example, we have the India-Africa Forum Summit, which was started by former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. This is India's biggest engagement with Africa. Through this, we work with African Union, which consists of more than 50 African countries. And we have already held 3 summits in the past. But problem is we haven't been regular. Periodic summits are not taking place. Only 3 summits of India-Africa Forum Summit has been held till date. We need to be more regular. We need to draw a lesson from China. If you look at China-Africa Forum Summit, it's being held every 3 years consistently from 2000. That's what allows China to be so dominant in Africa, whereas India has not been consistent with the India-Africa Forum Summit. But we have made some major investments. We have taken up some critical projects that establishes Indian presence and influence. India is a key supplier of essential commodities, especially drugs and medicines. As the pharmacy of the world, we supply generic drugs and vaccines to Africa, which is burdened with various diseases. In many ways, India's pharma industry is the backbone of Africa's healthcare system. We are investing today in agriculture. There are Indian agro companies, food processing companies, which are leasing land in order to secure food security for both India and Africa. There are Indian automobile manufacturers, which are playing a big role in the African economy. For example, TVS and Tata Motors, Mahindra, they already have a big presence, and many Indian automobile manufacturers are playing a big role in the African economy. India has invested in power projects in Africa. For example, we are working on transmission lines and power grids in Tunisia, in North Africa. There are Indian companies working on hospitals in Tanzania. We have spread our educational institutions as well. IIT Madras, for example, recently opened its first foreign campus in Zanzibar, which is a very important island belonging to Tanzania. There are Indian companies involved in a railway project in Ghana, in West Africa. So across Africa, there are Indian projects going on, some of them led by the government, some of them led by our private industry. So both these investments are essential. Some of you might recall the Pan-African E-Network project, which is a major soft power initiative of India. Under Pan-African E-Network project, we are delivering telemedicine, tele-education services through ISRO's satellites, free of cost to African countries. This idea was initially suggested by then President APJ Abdul Kalam. When he was visiting Africa, he saw the poverty, the lack of education and healthcare, and he suggested why India shouldn't use ISRO's telemedicine, tele-education facilities and deliver this free of cost to Africa. So, India launched the Pan-Africa E-Network project, and we have laid OFC cables across African countries, set up VSAT terminals to receive satellite signals, and thus we have connected Indian hospitals and doctors with African patients. We have connected Indian colleges and universities with African students, so thereby delivering telemedicine, tele-education for African countries. So such projects have already generated tremendous goodwill for India. So we need to further step up the involvement. For example, we have programs like ITEC, Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation. It's a major initiative of Ministry of External Affairs. So under ITEC program, we provide training and capacity building initiatives for many developing, underdeveloped countries. From Bhutan to Bangladesh to Fiji to African countries, they all benefit from our ITEC program, where we provide scholarships, IT training, we provide basic computer training, and we also provide training to civil servants and diplomats and police officers. We deliver capacity building programs and skill development initiatives through the ITEC program. So maybe India can use ITEC to create a critical mineral workforce in Africa. We can train the African youth to specialize in the critical mineral domain, to develop the skills needed in the sector of critical mining, so that we can create the manpower required for African countries, and this could help in securing our supply chains in Africa. In Zambia and Zimbabwe, as I was mentioning, we already have signed agreements for mineral exploration, and there are many other focus countries that we are prioritizing when it comes to exploration and exploitation of minerals. Indian startups can also play a big role by bringing in the right technology, from advanced mapping technology to logistical support. Indian tech companies and startups can play a big role as well in bringing efficiency into the supply chains of critical minerals. So there are many opportunities that lie ahead for India, but we should remember that we are in competition with others, with China, United States and Western powers. Even they are competing for the same resources in Africa. So to ensure the success of our critical mineral mission, the writer is strongly urging the government to prioritize relations with African countries, secure mineral resources in Africa, along with focusing on Australia and South America. So that is what we learn from this important column. Now let's head towards the prelim section and take a quick look at the small articles in today's newspaper. On page number 1 and 10, we have two articles related to anti-Naxal operations. Just day before yesterday, we had a detailed discussion on India's approach against Maoism. I discussed in detail the ideology, the history, the spread and evolution of Maoism, and how India has effectively tackled the Naxal threat. We studied how the Naxal threat is on the decline, and in 2024 alone, more than 150 Naxals have been eliminated by our security forces. So there is another breaking story, this time from Telangana, where 6 Maoists have been killed in an encounter based on a specific intelligence input that was received. Now the important point in this article is related to a special force unit called the Greyhounds. This anti-Naxal operation in the jungles of Telangana was carried out by an elite special force unit called the Greyhounds. The Greyhounds specialize in guerrilla warfare, in jungle warfare. It was raised by the state of Andhra Pradesh, the erstwhile state of Andhra Pradesh, when Andhra and Telangana were still united. From 1980s, Greyhounds played a critical role in decimating the PWG, the People's War Group, which was mainly centered around Andhra Pradesh and Odisha. So in the 80s and 90s, Andhra Pradesh saw tremendous success in wiping out Naxalism thanks to the operations of Greyhounds. In fact, before any other state could raise a special force, it was Andhra Pradesh, the then state of Andhra Pradesh, which experimented with an elite special force unit such as the Greyhounds. The very model of Greyhounds was very unique. Their success against Naxalism is in fact a case study around the world in commando schools. In many other countries as well, special force units, they study the counterinsurgency operations of the Greyhounds as a case study. For example, if you clear this exam and become an IPS officer, as part of your curriculum at National Police Academy in Hyderabad, you will be studying about the success of Greyhounds. So what Andhra Pradesh did differently was, they mainly recruited the local youth into Greyhounds, especially the ones affected by Naxalism. Instead of bringing outside forces, generally if you think of central armed police forces like CRPF, right? Even though CRPF would be highly trained, highly motivated to fight such internal wars, generally when soldiers are from other states, other regions of India, they may not connect with the conflict. They may not have the strong motivation to wipe out the threat. But if local youth who have been affected, who have lost their family members, or whose education, life has been uprooted because of Naxalism, because of Naxals, they will have a stronger urge to fight and defeat the extremist ideology. And Greyhounds not only recruited locally, but they gave superior training with superior weapons. So with the help of Indian Army's Commando Training School, Greyhounds were given specialist training in jungle and guerrilla warfare tactics. Special weapons were procured, better communication equipment, better protective gear was procured by the Andhra Pradesh police. This is what turned Greyhounds into an elite special force, and it also built a ground level intelligence gathering network. Because most of the commandos in Greyhounds, they could speak the local language, the tribal dialects, they understood the local terrain and geography as well. So all these factors played a role in ensuring the success of Greyhounds. So you should know what is the Greyhounds. So after Andhra Pradesh was bifurcated into Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, even the Greyhound Special Force Unit has been divided between Telangana Police and Andhra Pradesh Police. So even today they are involved in anti-Naxal operations, and they have seen a major success as they have eliminated 6 Maoists. There is a related editorial on page number 10. Because of back-to-back anti-Naxal operations, just day before yesterday, Chhattisgarh police eliminated more than 10 Naxals. Now in Telangana, few more Maoists have been eliminated. So in this year, almost 159 Naxals have been killed. So given these effective anti-Naxal operations which are going on across states, which are intelligence driven operations, the editorial is appreciating the efforts of the security forces and the governments, the center and the states, in tackling Naxalism. The editorial welcomes the enhanced proactiveness on the part of the Ministry of Home Affairs and the concerned states, from Chhattisgarh to Bihar to Andhra Pradesh to Odisha, and the role of the security forces, the state police and the central security forces and the intelligence agencies. So intelligence driven operations are yielding better results as it allows for targeting of the top leadership. But however, the editorial also strikes a note of concern, because in Chhattisgarh, the state government and the state police have launched a major anti-Naxal drive which has been named as Operation Prahar. So please note this down. Operation Prahar is a anti-Naxal operation that has been mounted by the Chhattisgarh state police. The concern here is that when such extensive security operations are being carried out, there could be chances of human rights violations and abuses being reported on the ground. If security forces go overboard, they might end up targeting civilians. It might lead to the abuse of power at the hands of security forces, leading to torture, fake encounters, killings, and even custodial deaths. So editorial is urging the security forces to not cross the red line, and it's urging the central and state governments to ensure that human rights is also prioritized while tackling the security threat. Because in any conflict zone, security forces can't be committing human rights violations, not just by accident or by a coincidence, but of course even deliberate violations should be completely avoided, because those violations create more distrust between the local people and the security forces. This could weaken our fight against the extremists, because this will push the locals to favor the extremists, fall prey to their propaganda and have resentment against the state and the security forces. To win any such ideological battle in a conflict zone, you need your security forces to have a trust-based relationship with the locals. So locals can act as the eyes and ears of the security forces. They can pass information to security forces and support the ongoing security operations. So the editorial is urging the states, the security forces, to be mindful of the possible abuse of power, the possible human right violations that might happen when security operations are stepped up. So that is what we learn from here. So for prelims, Greyhounds and Operation Prahar can be important. Coming to another article on page 14, we have an article related to a very important parliamentary committee, the PAC, Public Accounts Committee. Public Accounts Committee is one of the most important parliamentary committees. So let's understand what is its role and composition. But first, let's see why is it in news. Public Accounts Committee, which is responsible for maintaining financial accountability of the executive, it has started suo motu investigation into regulatory agencies that are set up by an act of parliament. We have statutory regulatory bodies like SEBI that regulates the capital markets. We have TRAI, the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, regulating the telecom sector. We have Airports Authority of India, regulating civil aviation in the country. So these statutory regulatory bodies, which are set up through an act of parliament, they are accountable to the parliament. But of late, there have been serious allegations that have come up against these regulatory bodies. For example, the Hindenburg report alleging major violations by the SEBI and the SEBI chairperson. There have been a lot of discrepancies that have come up with the functioning of TRAI and Airports Authority of India. So to investigate these discrepancies and possible financial violations, PAC has started suo motu investigation into the functioning of these regulatory bodies. So Public Accounts Committee is one of the most important parliamentary standing committees. It mainly looks into the finances, how expenditure is being carried out, and maintains essentially financial scrutiny on the government. It audits the reports of the CAG which are presented to the parliament. It can look into government expenses and priorities and look at whether any diversion of funds is visible or any inefficient expenditure is visible, thus bringing the government into account on the floor of the house in the parliament. This important committee responsible for financial propriety, it consists of 22 members, 15 from Lok Sabha, 7 from Rajya Sabha. The members are elected from the existing MPs in the house for a term of 1 year through the system of proportional representation through a single transferable vote. And by convention, the committee chairman will always be an opposition leader from the opposition party, so that PAC can be effective in holding the government accountable when it comes to financial expenditure. And also please note, a minister who is part of the Council of Ministers cannot be part of the PAC because that will be a conflict of interest. So only MPs who are non-ministers, 15 from Lok Sabha, 7 from Rajya Sabha, are elected for a 1-year term to serve as members of PAC, and the chairman of the committee will be a member of the opposition. Now let's look at another important article on page 16 related to Interpol and CBI. CBI, the Central Bureau of Investigation, which is a elite law enforcement agency, it is the designated liaison agency to work with Interpol. Interpol is International Criminal Police Organization, headquartered in Lyon, France, set up in 1923. The primary role of Interpol is to act as a coordinating platform between police organizations and law enforcement agencies around the world. It mainly plays a role in tracking criminals and in tackling organized crime, from drug trafficking to arms smuggling to terrorism to even other extraditable offences, from murder to financial offences to even modern day crime such as cyber crimes. So all such criminal activities are tackled through Interpol, and it's mainly a coordinating platform where police organizations from around the world, law enforcement agencies from around the world, and investigating agencies can work together, share information, request cooperation from other countries and jurisdictions in order to get hold of criminals and to tackle organized crime. So from India, CBI is the designated authority. CBI is the nodal authority, the liaison to work with Interpol. So through Interpol, you can issue corner notices, color cornered notices. There are different types of color coded notices issued through Interpol. You have the red corner notice, the blue corner notice. They all serve a different purpose. Now, please find out how many color coded notices are there with Interpol, how many notices can be issued, what is their purpose. Please mention that in the comment section. This can be important for prelims. So, let us say there is a wanted individual by a state police. The state police can approach the CBI, provide enough evidence, and CBI will work with Interpol, share the evidence regarding this individual, and if Interpol is convinced that this criminal who is wanted is involved in this crime, and accordingly Interpol will issue a color notice. Usually a red corner notice is raised to essentially push other countries and their police organizations to help in locating the individual and arresting and extraditing the individual. So, find out more about these colored or color coded notices issued by Interpol and what is their purpose, what is their essential intention. So, CBI hosted the 10th Interpol Liaison Officers Conference, and it has pointed out that to tackle new age organized crime, from cyber crimes to financial crimes to traditional crimes like smuggling, trafficking, etc., we need global coordination. We need global agencies, police and law enforcement agencies to work together. So, CBI has informed that India has also joined Europol. Just like Interpol is a global international criminal police organization, European countries have a coordinating platform called Europol. So, Ministry of Home Affairs has approved the establishment of a relationship between CBI and Europol as well, and the CBI Academy, the training academy, has joined Interpol's Global Academy network. So, this provides for greater coordination with regard to training of our police and investigating agencies as well. It will bring them on par with global standards, create platforms for greater global coordination, and CBI has even set up a dedicated global operations center so that it can liaise with Interpol and coordinate with global police and law enforcement agencies. Next, on page 18, we have an article from International Relations. China has reportedly handed over 2 naval ships to Cambodia. This signifies the growing strategic defense relations between China and Cambodia. Cambodia is seen as a close ally of China in Southeast Asia region. China exercises significant influence over Cambodia, and it's part of China's Belt and Road Initiative. China has already made significant investments in Cambodia. It shares a very good defense military relationship, and there are reports that China is building a military base at the Ream naval base in Cambodia. Now, this water body here is a very crucial water body. It's the Gulf of Thailand. The Gulf of Thailand that you see over here is a key part of the South China Sea and a vital link between Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. So, China, which is already dominating South China Sea, has expanded its influence into Gulf of Thailand, and China has plans to set up a naval base, a potential military base in Cambodia over here, the Ream naval base. China also has a proposal with Thailand to build the Kra Canal across the Kra Isthmus to create a shorter route between South China Sea and Andaman Sea. This essentially will reduce China's dependency on Malacca Strait, which is a choke point. China can bypass Malacca if the Kra Isthmus is opened up in Thailand and the Kra Canal is built. Then ships can directly move from Gulf of Thailand into Andaman Sea, thus reducing China's dependency on Malacca. So, this has strategic implications for India, even United States. So, we closely watch the defense relations and the strategic relations that China has with Cambodia and the proposed Kra project with Thailand. Coming to the last article, we have an update on China-Africa Summit. We studied this topic yesterday. We spoke about the forum between China and Africa, right? So, just like India-Africa Forum Summit, there is a China-Africa Summit as well, and China has been hosting this since 2000, and it has been very consistent, hosting it every 3 years. So, more than 50 African leaders attended the China-Africa Forum Summit, and China has made some big announcements. Most of the African countries are already part of Belt and Road Initiative, and China has already made some bilateral investments, as we discussed in the previous article. But apart from that, China has freshly announced $50 billion funds. Almost $10 billion would be in the form of investments by Chinese companies. The rest would be in the form of concessional loans. So around $40 billion worth of loans, concessional loans, and $10 billion worth of foreign investment by Chinese companies. A total of $50 billion in funding has been announced by China, and these funds will go into African countries with focus on agriculture, energy projects, infrastructure projects, and especially mining projects. So as we discussed under the column, China is mainly focused on stepping up its diplomatic and military presence and influence to secure critical strategic minerals. China is also securing agricultural land to guarantee food security in the future. It's involved in key infrastructure projects from road, rail to port projects. It's involved in energy and power projects in Africa. China is the largest trading partner of Africa today, and it has even pledged support for military training and military modernization of African countries. It has announced around $141 million in military assistance, with training being provided to military personnel in African countries. So China's military presence is going up, its economic presence is already very significant, and it aims to create 1 million jobs and ensure that in the upcoming energy revolution, China will play a critical role in Africa and secure the supply of critical minerals from lithium to cobalt and nickel. So as we discussed in DRC, China has a major investment already. It has secured a cobalt mine, it's securing lithium resources. So no wonder China dominates the global supply chain of critical minerals. So with this new announcement of $50 billion funding to Africa, China has taken another major step in enhancing its presence and influence in Africa. So on this note, I would like to bring my discussion to an end. I hope you guys have liked the session, understood everything, and do let me know what you think in the comments. If you like the session, do press the like button and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That is it for today. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.